Hi everyone, I'm Hessie Jones and welcome to Tech Uncensored. We are at Collision this week, June 17th to the 20th, and I'm happy here to have Dr. Ann Irvine, Chief Data and Analytics Officer at Resilience. And Resilience is pioneering a new approach to managing cyber risks, so I want to learn all about that today. So let's start with that, and welcome.
Great, thank you. Great to be here. So I'll just give you a brief overview of what we're doing at Resilience. So at Resilience, we are providing our customers with really a comprehensive risk management solution that includes insurance as well as additional products and services that help our customers better manage their cyber risk comprehensively. We believe really strongly that insurance and the transfer of cyber risk to an insurance carrier is a big part of managing any risk, to include cyber risk. But there are a few ways you can invest your dollars when you're thinking about managing your cyber risk. You can buy insurance. You can also invest in cyber controls to reduce your exposure to risk. We work with companies to help them understand how they can strike that balance, where their investment dollars should go, whether that's investing in particular controls, investing in their security team, or investing more in insurance. But we provide a comprehensive solution to customers to help them make those decisions, those trade-offs, and offer the insurance coverage itself directly.
Okay, so I'm going to throw a couple of things at you because I was doing a little bit of research on the number of breaches that have happened in the last couple of years. So between 2022 and 23, there was a 20% increase in data breaches. Publicly reported data compromises rose 78% year over year. The average cost of a breach was about $4.5 million. And globally, the number of victims actually doubled year over year. So from your perspective, you are probably aware of some of these stats. It's probably the reason why companies like yours exist. What are you seeing on your end when it comes to these kinds of risks?
Yeah, so data breaches were sort of the major headline data breaches that happened maybe 10 years ago really took the cyber insurance market to the next level because they cost organizations so much money. And data breaches continue to be a risk to organizations. I think some of these statistics honestly are driven by increased amounts of disclosure of data breaches. It's no longer the case that there is an enormous amount of reputational harm when a data breach occurs at an organization because they're more common and we're sort of used to them as consumers. And there's more regulation and more sort of guidelines around what's disclosed and when and to whom. So some of those numbers are going up because of regulation and actually the reduced reputational risk. As data breaches have become almost steady state and sort of understood as a risk, ransomware attacks have really skyrocketed in the last few years, and that tends to be the sort of biggest unknown when we work with organizations in terms of, am I going to suffer from a ransomware attack? How is it going to happen? How much is it going to cost? How am I going to deal with it? That's a bit more of an unknown space for our customers than the data breaches, which are relatively well regulated and understood.
So let's talk a little bit about what your new approach is and why it's different than what we've seen before.
Yeah, so to sort of distinguish ourselves, well, we distinguish ourselves from both traditional insurance carriers as well as others in the sort of technology space that are attempting to address the cyber risk management problem that our customers have. In contrast to incumbent insurers, we're moving really quickly. Threats are evolving. Threat actors are using new techniques to launch ransomware attacks and to sort of negotiate with customers to try to incentivize them to pay ransoms after the attack. These things are constantly evolving. They're new threat actors. Their approaches are changing very rapidly. And we're responding to those changes really in very, very real time in a way that traditional insurance incumbents just can't move so quickly. So when we're working with customers through a claim, we very quickly understand how did this attack happen, and how is it handled, and how can we spread that information and create a sort of positive feedback loop of information sharing and use those learnings to help the other customers in our portfolio. And we're also learning how much these cost. So in contrast to others in the sort of technology space that are trying to address the same customer need of understanding how to protect themselves and manage their cyber risk, we are seeing how these attacks happen and how much they cost, because we're working with companies as their insurance provider. So we know how they play out and really the dollars and cents that are at stake, in a way that puts us in a really good position to talk about things like ROI on different investments into security controls as well as insurance.
I guess from a defensive perspective, then you're going to try to help a lot of these companies be a little bit more proactive, identifying them before, it's too late to do anything about them. So from your perspective, we've seen the rise of a lot of these large language models, which have probably been the cause of some of these, these kinds of risks that we're seeing in the marketplace. Can you point to some, learnings or statistics from your perspective that have correlated with the rise of LLMs?
The sort of classic example that everyone points to, and I will as well, is that phishing attacks will become more personalized, more tailored, much harder to spot. When you receive an email that says, hey, hey, Anne, great job on the collision panel. I heard you talk about XYZ, and I'd love if you took a look at Y. Click this link to connect with me. That information about me being at the collision conference and speaking on a particular topic is on the web, and that's available for customization of really spear phishing attacks. I think it's too early to tell how quickly technology users are or not keeping up with these new attacks, and to what extent really threat actors are really leveraging these to do this custom personalization. I think it's a little early to tell. I think the fact is it's pretty easy to be a cyber criminal. The barrier to entry is pretty low, and the attacks that are really meant that are incentivized by financial gain, the threat actors that are out there attacking companies because they want to make a quick buck, those attacks are opportunistic. There's a lot of sort of spraying, sort of going for anyone, the lowest hanging fruit, and really custom, bespoke, personalized spear phishing emails are not necessary to have success. So for most types of attacks, there are more sophisticated actors doing other things that may leverage these technologies at a faster tick, but that's not most of the cyber attacks that are out there in the wild.
So you deal mainly with enterprise clients?
Yep.
Okay, so do you have any visibility into what something like this could cost a medium or a smaller size company? Because I would doubt that they don't have the wherewithal or the infrastructure to properly defend themselves either.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think my advice to a smaller, particularly a very small company, would be to outsource their security to companies that are really experts, not try to build things in-house and completely manage their security on their own. It's really important to get the expertise of someone that's really focused on cybersecurity as a risk. Because, yeah, as you said, they're just not going to have the resources to do that on their own. But there are tools and companies and services out there to help.
Okay, so I want to talk about fighting AI with AI, and if it's even possible to be able to leverage some of the LLMs to fight the speed and scale of what we're seeing today. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I think that's a common phrase I've heard around this conference today, and I think I've been working in the AI space for 20 years. I'm more of a sort of natural skeptic, I think, in this hype cycle where we are. I think that's fine. There are ways to fight against new technologies with new technologies. I mean, we've seen this in the cybersecurity industry in general for a very long time. There's always new technology to fight the new stuff. I think I do worry about there's always going to be a need for a human that really understands what's going on to manage the application of technology, and this is true on the attacker side as well as the defensive side, by the way. I think in some ways, I think about attackers that see new technology as really making it easier for them to launch their first attack and to get into cybercrime and to make some money. But I hope and believe that our law enforcement agencies internationally are on top of that too, right? And they will be able to, the less sophisticated the threat actors get, the easier time we will have identifying them and, bringing justice to them. So on the defensive side, though, I mean the same is true. We still need humans at keyboards doing the hard work, understanding how the attacks are happening, and understanding how to most effectively use technologies to defend. It's not just a matter of turning on a knob and saying, okay, now AI is fighting AI, right? There's a lot of sophistication that has to go into sort of thinking through what does that even mean.
Exactly. But I mean, as you say, it's going to become easier to have this threat attack that can happen in more creative and more frequent ways. Will we ever get to the point where we could stop it before it hits our servers? You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I'm finding that we're playing whack-a-mole, and the minute we identify something, we create a system that can stop future attacks of that kind.
Yep.
But then you have new ones that come up on the horizon that nobody even thought about.
Yeah, totally. I think at Resilience, we have an entire team of security researchers that are really trying to deeply understand. Again, they're human. The attackers on the other side of these incidents they're just people that are sitting in front of a screen somewhere out in the world doing these things. And it is having fun, making money, buying Lamborghinis, some of them,
Yeah.
But they're just people, and they work a certain way, they think a certain way. A lot of these criminal threat actor groups have complex politics, even, within the sort of market space where they partner, their partnerships. It's a whole business sort of ecosystem that these threat actor groups are in. And so we have to understand what are they doing really deeply to be able to disrupt that. It's not just about, oh, well, we've seen an attack from this IP address, so now we're going to very quickly block all traffic from that IP address. That's sort of a traditional security response, but again, these are people, and we need to understand how to disrupt the entire ecosystem that they're working in.
And from an incentive perspective, we're not talking, do you remember War Games? Years ago, Matthew Broderick, and he was just playing a game, and then he didn't realize that he actually, when he was playing the game, he actually disrupted a security console from the Department of Defense or something like that. So he didn't even realize what he was doing, but he was doing it for fun to see if he could do it. And a lot of times, that's what it is. When you say they're just people, it could be kids, it could be people who are just trying to challenge themselves and trying to figure out whether or not they could do it. And that's it, right? They don't want anything out of it. But I think the ones that actually capitalize on that, where they ask for Bitcoin, where they ask for stuff in exchange, that's where we're starting to see that, more of a threat, because now there's an incentive to get things, right? Are you actually seeing that level of threat at the enterprise level, even at the insurance level?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the sophisticated threat actors that do have financial motives, that are, demanding ransom payments in exchange for decryption keys to let businesses get back to business. I mean, a recent top of mind example, the two casinos in Las Vegas, MGM and Caesars, both suffered ransomware attacks last September or so maybe, and disrupted casino operations. They lost a lot of money. Those were, actually the speculation is that those were young male Americans that were just trying to make a quick buck, that were behind those attacks. I believe deeply. Resilience was founded by veterans of the U.S. military that believe really deeply that, again, this is a human problem, and we've got to punish these humans. I mean, this is major criminal activity, and the sort of public-private partnerships involved in taking down these threat actors, we're excited to be a part of as well.
So one last question, where do you think the landscape is going? So we're moving into an era where if some of these things are going to become a lot easier to create and to be able to develop manipulations at far greater speed and scale, where do you think the industry needs to go? And at what point does it need to shift to more proactive stance as opposed to defensive?
Yeah, I do predict that the cybersecurity industry is going to be disrupted pretty severely because I think we're going to start to see through some of the noise. There's a lot of, if you go to the big cybersecurity conferences, RSA and
Yes.
these things, there are a lot of vendors. It's a very crowded sort of marketplace, and there is a lot of smoke and mirrors and a lot of, it's just very hard to tell what's actually having an impact and what's not, and what tools do I actually need, what's helpful and what's not. I think that is going to start to change as we start to think about cybersecurity more as a risk, and we start to put more data and more dollars and cents sort of around some of these analyses. So that's one trend that I predict will change soon.
Yeah. I mean, it's in line with, the emergence of data privacy and the laws that are becoming a lot more stringent because cybersecurity and data privacy go hand in hand. You can't really have one without the other, and that's my belief as well. And so, as we become a lot more sophisticated in automation and all these technologies, data will not. I don't think it will cease to exist as something that people don't want. The demand for it will continue to happen, right? So, any last words?
Last words, I do. I worry a bit in both in cybersecurity and more generally about AI and LLMs taking over jobs. I mean, there will be automation, and we're going to need to upskill individuals, both for their sake, but also for the sake of us solving some of these really hard problems. So, it's just sort of a challenge to all of us to figure out how to do that. Cybersecurity for sure. We need people, and we need smart, thoughtful people. Again, these are all people problems. These are human-driven risks and human-driven responses, and we need really smart, motivated people behind the good guy side of the keyboard to help stop these attacks.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Anne, for joining me today and for educating us on everything that you're doing and what we need to do to actually move this conversation forward for humanity,
Yeah.
right? For humanity.
Exactly.
Okay, so for everyone out there, thank you very much. This is day one of Collision. Hesse Jones. We're at Tech Uncensored, and we'll be back for the rest of the week. Take care.